Hi everyone, Howie and Kaylyn here again with another question and answer. We're really excited to be sharing some time and space with you today. So, you want to hop right into it, Kaylyn?
Yeah, question number one. What if the medicine doesn't work for me?
So, it working is an important thing to get clear about. Like, what are we defining as success within the process? So, it depends where you are. If you're from a place of like really struggling in your life, then maybe success looks like I feel better or I feel like I have more clarity. So we can maybe associate that with working. But sometimes in the beginning, too, as we open up our system, we're confronted with some of the things that we've been suppressing for a long time. So maybe it's sadness or anger or frustration, whatever, coming up through the open system. From that lens, it's still working because you have energy moving and energy clearing, but it might not feel the way you want it to. So I think it's important to really get clear on what your definition of success is and to try and broaden it to be more accepting of what does show up in the experience.
Yeah, I love that too, and I love you really pointing to like how do you define what success looks like. And I think the misconception with this is that most people attach, how big the experience feels to how successful it is. And what we know from facilitating thousands of these sessions and going through the program ourselves is that some of the most profound shifts and changes are happening like beneath the layer of the conscious mind, right? So the goal, isn't really to like force this big, profound experience, but more creating like the safety and the conditions in the body that change can become possible or even available to you, right? And I think that the missing link that we really focus on strongly in our program is integration. And I think that the success of your program is really contingent on how you're showing up, not just, in your weekly sessions, but in your day to day life. And if you're doing both of those things and creating that beautiful bridge between, these beautiful insights and downloads and like things that you touch in your sessions while actively, making those choices and changes in your day to day life, then you will be successful, right? So, I think too there is this misconception around like how intense the experience feels to it being successful, and what we know is that like that correlation just really doesn't matter. We have some patients who really just have beautiful space where they experience nothing, where there's calmness, where maybe they're not having the, loop of anxious thoughts and constant mind chatter, and like that is deeply healing and nourishing to their body and nervous system. There's other people who, like myself, are very visual, right? I'm seeing a lot of things, I'm receiving a lot of things, and that's the way that my subconscious and my nervous system receives, right? So you have to understand too, there isn't a one size fits all approach to this or what it is going to look like. And I think that's why doing this with community and support is so beneficial to really help you reach that like peak of success that maybe you're identifying with, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot that we don't understand about this work either. Like, yeah, there's scientific proof and there's a lot of anecdotal, you know, studies and we know firsthand working with so many people that most people do feel a lot better as they balance themselves out. But I think there is a degree of mystery in the work you're doing too. So, like, to take everything with a grain of salt, I think the more accepting you can be of the process in general, that is success. Can I stay with the parts I want to run from? That to me is success. Can I be present with the beautiful moments as well? And then, most importantly, like Kaylin mentioned, in terms of integration, how am I showing up day to day? Am I still being hijacked by my triggers and letting those drive the car of my life? Am I letting negative mind chatter make the decisions in my life? Or am I able to hold enough spaciousness where those things are allowed, but I still maintain agency in choosing what direction I go and what actions I take? So for me, that's more holistic success, but there are different degrees of success kind of depending on what perspective you're coming from.
Yeah, I love that. Let's go to the next one because I think it ties into this conversation perfectly. What if I feel like nothing is happening during my sessions?
Exactly. It ties in perfectly. So nothing happening the way because I've had lots of experiences where nothing happens. And looking back on it, there was this degree of, can you just be with yourself in your own sober energy? Like choosing to go meditate without taking anything. Like, can you just be with yourself without it needing to be different or needing to have some big mystical experience? And so I didn't like those experiences either when those started happening, because I was like, oh, it's just relief and it's just beautiful. And then you start getting quote unquote duds. And it's like, well, I must need more, or it must be broken, or it must not work anymore. But I think it's the perfect opportunity for integration, where the medicine's like, I'm not going to.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, not every session has to be dramatic. And I think too, sometimes when you're kind of chasing that peak state or those peak experiences, and I've said this term before, but it really just creates mental masturbation because it's so much information and so much going on, but you're not really doing anything with it. So it's not even really serving you to just get more, get more, get more, get more, get more, right? And I think, yes, some sessions can provide us these profound insights and realizations and perspectives. Absolutely, I've had those. And what can be even just as powerful is a session that's really regulating the nervous system, that's teaching the body safety, right? That's allowing you to, for the first time in maybe years, be fully present in your human experience, right? So you may perceive that as, oh, nothing's happening, right? While we know that, you know, the brain, the body, right, the spirit are still changing. Like we say, it's just you don't have like the language to really speak to it, or maybe you don't even have the awareness yet to notice yet. But it doesn't mean that, something isn't happening, right? And I think too, what I've learned personally is that like not all healing is done in real time, right? We think that like the session is going to be that thing, and it's like those may start like laying the building blocks or opening up the pathways and doors, but it may not have that big profound experience right in that moment, but it can be giving you the tools and the resources and even just kind of the perspectives that you need to try on to really start embarking on healing whatever it is that you're grappling with, right? So it's also knowing that like, this isn't a quick fix. It's a relationship, right? It's not a linear thing. It's kind of more of a spiral. And when you can just go into every session knowing that, okay, I am available for whatever arises and all of it is perfect and all of it is welcome, there's always going to be something there, whether you're conscious to it or not, in my perspective.
And what's coming through based on what you just shared with it being cyclical is, if you think about, okay, you have a really expansive experience and you have heightened awareness, maybe of your patterns, maybe of how your life has progressed, etc. Like, great. You got the gift of heightened awareness. Now, can you go apply that gift to each area of your life? So you don't just need more awareness if you haven't even applied the awareness that you were just gifted to your life. So it's like you get these opportunities to face adversity, challenges, stressors, beautiful moments, and to see if you can maintain and hold that awareness within those experiences. And that's why I think it feels cyclical, because it's like I have a heightened level of awareness. Now I'm going to go around the spectrum of experience and see if I can maintain that awareness. And if I do, then I get another upgrade in awareness. And then you get to go around the merry-go-round again. So you keep experiencing life, but from new perspectives, from more heightened awareness. And of course, sometimes we still get triggered. Sometimes we still get hijacked by our emotions and our thoughts. That's okay. This is how we learn and grow. If we can look at those things and reflect and say, hey, maybe next time, now that I'm more aware that I got so triggered in that, I can bring a little more spaciousness to it. And I promise you, you will get an opportunity to get triggered again. Like Kaylin
Yeah.
and I, we both had kind of a tough day today, and feeling really triggered and really frustrated, but also being able to maintain spaciousness, that it's okay to feel this. Like, what's wrong with feeling that? I'm not above being frustrated. I'm not above being triggered, but I can maintain enough spaciousness to where I don't have to let that trigger decide how I want to respond and relate to my life. So it's that nice balance of of full expression, but also you maintaining your agency and your free will to choose how you want to relate.
Yeah, I love that. And the last thing I just want to add to that before we go into the next one is we talk about this a lot, but it's really about a capacity. I think the most powerful things that altered states that ketamine has offered me personally is this greater capacity within myself where, I can be feeling triggered. I had a really frustrating day, right? I was pretty like pissed off to be honest, right? And I didn't have to leave myself. I didn't have to abandon myself. I still was able to show up here and facilitate this because I didn't run away from being frustrated and triggered. I wasn't shaming or judging myself for being frustrated or triggered. Do you know what I mean? And I think the beautiful thing, the more that you do this work, is that you realize that I really do have this spaciousness and capacity in my body and in my vessel to hold it all. And it doesn't mean that we're always going to like what comes up or that it's our preference, right? But we're still resourced enough within ourselves to hold and meet life and with whatever circumstance throws our way. And to me, that is more healing than, having some peak experience or some, mystical experience, whatever it is. Those things are cool, but if they don't change how you show up and inhabit your life, then again, it's really not doing anything for you as far as like the healing journey would go, if that makes sense. And I think too, this next one kind of goes into it too, is what if I don't have spiritual or mystical experiences?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would say that's just not relevant for where you are right now, because if it were, then you'd be having them.
100%.
Like
Yeah.
ketamine is not the only access point to spirit or to mysticism. People tap in all sorts of ways. So I get it. Like we want that. Sometimes we have this big inner yearning to feel more connected, and it can be frustrating when we aren't having those experiences and we hear that everyone else is having those experiences. I get that, but again, this comes back to, well, what does this create within my system? Frustration, disappointment, my mind going to, this doesn't work for me. Fine. Can all of that expression be allowed? Because this is the part of you that if you just let that be okay, that your body feels that way about it, or that your mind thinks that way about it, this is how you start untangling the knot and ending the inner conflict within your system. And that's going to actually bring you closer to God than anything else, because you could be fully here for your human life. I think it's kind of interesting that so many of us want to chase these mystical states, not realizing that our life here is temporary. And like we're in the mystical state as a human being, right? If you're thinking of
Yeah.
it from the spiritual perspective, it's like this is the thing you get to go do. So I get that we want more clarity on those things. We want to feel safe within this existence. But the way that happens isn't just by you being gifted safety and never being bothered by anything again. It's really by allowing your human side to fully express while maintaining your agency. Like Kaylin mentioned, showing up to this, even if you're angry, upset, frustrated, letting that be okay, but saying I'm still going to show up anyway. Because why does my body need to be happy for me to show up? And it starts to get kind of weird once you realize, why did I ever even think that was true? Like, why did
Yeah.
I think I had to be happy to show up in the way I want to show up? Like, they're not actually correlated. Everyone can seem like the Buddha when everything's going their way in life, but who could stay open to that expression when things are going the opposite of the way you want? So I view these things as opportunities. That doesn't mean I like them just because they're opportunities. Sometimes it's an opportunity to say, this freaking sucks and I hate it, but letting that be okay.
Yeah, I love that. And I think too, you know, so much of this is really about, in my perspective, is about healing our nervous system. And your nervous system really doesn't care how big, how impressive, how mystical your experience was. It doesn't care about that, right? Like having a spiritual or a mystical experience isn't a requirement for healing. Do those things sometimes happen? Yes, absolutely. I've touched them. I know Howie's touched them. Our clients have. And I think too, what gets sticky is when we play the game of comparison, right? If I'm going to compare my journeys to Howie's journeys, then one of us is always going to feel like we're missing out, right? And the whole thing about this is these sessions, right, these programs are so unique to every individual. Now, two people have the same experiences or the same sessions ever. And why is that, right? Because on an energetic level, on a spiritual level, on a nervous system level, right, on a trauma level, an identity level, right, there's so many variables. We're all very different and unique and have lived different lives. So, what we're available to, what we're open to, what we can access is going to look very, very different. And just because maybe you haven't had one yet doesn't mean that you also won't, right? Sometimes the body really needs to learn that it's safe in these altered states before you can really open up to something greater than that, right? And sometimes maybe you're someone who is very spiritual and very mystical, and they're like, hey, you need to learn how to be grounded in this human experience. So they're not giving you more of that when you're already so plugged in and escaping into that realm, right? So again, we have to really trust the intelligence of the medicine because we do know it's incredibly wise. All these medicines are incredibly wise and they're interacting with our energy and our system in a way that's really going to nourish us and support us. So, maybe instead of like having this layer of judgment or regret or feeling FOMO because you're not having, it's more about looking at what is showing up for me, what is being revealed for me, what am I experiencing. And when you can actually meet what's there and what's being revealed, it's going to open up so many other doors for you to have other experiences. But you can't bypass the medicine of the moment and of the presence, right? So I really do believe, with altered states and even just in life, we're always being served up exactly what we need, even when we don't like it. Trust me, I didn't like what was happening this morning. I still don't like it, and for some way I know that it is serving me, right? And it's just an easier perspective to try on instead of constantly, judging your experience or feeling like you're missing out or you're not. You know what I mean? Like each of us is going to have such a unique path and relationship with this medicine, and it's okay if it doesn't look like everyone else's or what you've been told it should look like. Do you want to add
Yes,
anything
and,
to
and
that?
the expansive experience, well, the expansive experiences, the mystical experiences can be beautiful, but they have to be balanced out, like Kaylin mentioned, with grounded integration. So just because you saw how all the dots connected in your life, that's great, that's beautiful, but like practically, what do I do about it? How do I implement this in my life? How do I bring this into the ups and downs, the natural rhythm of how the human experience works? So we get plenty of opportunities, we get plenty of time to do it. It's not a rush job, but I really think that it's great to know that such heightened expansion exists, but it's not that useful if it's not applied practically into your day to day.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go to the next one. Why do I feel different days after my session?
Well, ketamine seems to work, like Kaylin mentioned, very much on the nervous system and kind of the fight or flight response within the brain. And what we've seen with our clients and in our experience is that I like to describe it as most of us are operating in a closed system, which would be the fight or flight. So think of a dam blocking the river. So the flow of the river can't happen with the dam there. So that's what happens when our system's closed when we're in survival mode, which we would also call chronic stress. So when we're in chronic stress and our system's closed, we burn ourselves out. It's like having the gas and the brake being pressed at the same time. So ketamine flips off, that's called the sympathetic nervous system, and opens up the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. So this is an open system where energy can actually move, right? We're removing the dam from the river. And that's why days after, that energy is still circulating. So you don't feel like you're so pressurized, like there's so much pressure bumping against the dam wall. The dam has been broken down and now the energy is flowing. And when energy is flowing, it just feels cleaner. There's less pressure there. So we feel lighter and depressurized, if you will. So that can last for a while, and that's what we call the window of relief. Some people call it neuroplasticity, but it's really when the nervous system has switched modes. And so that's more the scientific side, and I think personally that's kind of what we're learning how to do without taking ketamine or anything exogenous is how do I keep my system open to life so life can actually work through me as opposed to just bumping up against a wall.
Yeah, I love that. And, it kind of ties into the beginning of our call when we said, sometimes it's not just the session, right? Everyone's, looking at how successful the medicine's working dependent on the session. And what we know is that, the brain is going to continue to change after the experience, and healing is going to continue to unfold gradually. And, you really do have like this 3 to 5 day window where your kind of brain is like almost like goo brain, right? You're at this peak neuroplasticity. And it's not uncommon that days after your session, you may feel more emotional because you did begin to open your system. So all these things that were trapped in the nervous system start to flood. Maybe it's emotions, maybe it's memories, right? Maybe it's sensations that you've been numbing down for so long that it's almost like the volume gets turned up because it was permission to be felt, right? So, it's not uncommon for you to feel more emotional, or maybe you have the flip side where for a few days after a session you're like on a high, right? You feel more joyous, you feel more present, you feel more connected, right? And that's why we're so heavily on, okay, well, what are you doing in that peak window when you're in this state of kind of having this goo brain, right? And it's almost like if you're a parent and you have a child, when they're younger, like their brain's like a sponge, right? So it's really receiving and imprinting everything that's being consumed at that early age. Same thing happens when you're post session, right? Your brain's really suggestible to new ideas, perspectives, behaviors, and things like that. So, the fact that you're feeling the sense of being more emotional, whether it's, a sad emotion or a happy emotion, is really signs that the medicine is really weaving into your energy and into your nervous system and beginning to open those channels and pockets so that the energy can move. Like, this is a really, really great sign. And if you are feeling resistant to that, like my suggestion here would be to like keep a journal every day after your session. Just notice, what is my mood like? What is my energy like? What am I feeling called to do? Maybe you notice you started going to the gym or you feel more creative, and just kind of like getting a key insight into how long you feel that way and what are the things that feel really nourishing that could support you when you're noticing this kind of emotional wave after your sessions, and probably really support you to kind of harness and integrate it in a different way that's not so much in the head but more in a lived experience.
Exactly. And I think it's that window of neuroplasticity for me is a good question to ask is like, how do I want to parent myself moving forward?
Yeah.
How do I want to parent my body that's feeling emotional like it's my child? Right. So rather than like being really hard on the child, like be happy, do all this stuff, trying to control them more. It's like, how can I be more accepting and loving towards my body and mind in this? Because I think the rewiring is more, like I like to say, more of a posture than creating this neurotic thing of always thinking positively. Like that's something you actually have control over, or always feeling happy. Like that's actually something you have control over. It's like, what if you didn't have to do any of that? And it was just about how do you relate to that part of yourself? So it really flips the script, and there's something interesting about rewiring from that angle because if your mind and body feel safe, that's what actually keeps the system open. As soon as it's like you feel sad, why do you feel sad? You shouldn't feel sad, yada, yada, yada. System closes again because it's like, well, here we go. I guess they didn't change because they're not relating to me any differently. So
Yeah.
system open is I don't have to like it, but I won't abandon you with both the mind and body. If we can keep that, we can keep the channel open. It's not going to be open all the time, right? We're still going to get triggered. We're still going to be unconscious part of the time. But can we get into a rhythm where we're progressing towards keeping it more open as our baseline? And that's where your life really starts to change, even if the circumstances don't change right away.
Yeah, I love that. Let's go to the next one. What if I'm afraid to let go during an altered state experience? This is a good question.
Practically, I would say in your next session, like lower the amount because you're not trying to override your fear or your system. That's actually doing the opposite of what I was just explaining about
Yep.
reparenting yourself. So instead of being like, we're going on the biggest roller coaster, I don't care if you're kicking and screaming, it's saying, let's take our time. We can work our way up to that, right? It's the same thing with the body and the nervous system. We don't have to blast through anything. I'm doing this to reconnect with you, to be able to listen better, to come home to myself. The door's not going to be open if you're overriding it. And sometimes we push the boundary and like that was a little too much for my system. Great. That's just feedback. Maybe next time I take a little less so I'm not pushing it so hard. So that would be my practical advice for that.
No, I love that. And I just want to say this is probably the most common fear that people have when entering into this type of therapy, especially if you've never experienced an altered state. It does feel really scary to kind of release that sense of control, right? And I think too something to keep in mind is like the whole idea isn't about forcing surrender. That's not what we're trying to do, right? Because we're not trying to bypass the body, we're not trying to bypass the signals, but what we are trying to do is to start creating enough safety where the body just starts to open organically and on its own. And I think too, what makes our program unique and different is like we honor the body first, right? So we start in a slow way and we titrate and work with people very like individually to figure out what their body specifically needs and what's going to support them, because it isn't a one size fits all, right? Like we said, everybody's ideal dose and ideal experience is going to be completely different, right? So if you're noticing like you have that fear, start slow. It's so much better to start slow and create some footing and some safety in these altered states than to just go too fast, too hard, too quick. Because honestly, what that is going to do from a nervous system perspective, it's going to make you armor up and go into protection. So then every time you go to take one of these, the body's going to go, oh, no, 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 no. This is scary. This doesn't feel safe. Protect, 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 protect. Right? And it's going to actually kind of create resistance to the medicine and actually doing what the medicine is here to do. Right? So if the fear is there, my first thing to tell you is, one, completely normal. I think most people do because it's unknown, it's unfamiliar, it's unpracticed. A lot of us haven't been in those states. So it's okay to feel those feelings. And you can still feel those feelings and start slow in a way that's going to support your system. Also, making sure you're well resourced, right? So if you are feeling fear, making sure you set up your set and setting in a way that's really going to support you. Making sure maybe, you have a person there that creates a lot of safety for you. So if you do feel like you expanded or, are feeling a little out of control in a sense that like it's just not your normal waking window, that you have those things in place to offer support, to offer safety. And I think the more that you give yourself the resources that you need, you're always going to be able to meet whatever arises, right? But I think what makes us different is like we really honor like the pace of the body and the nervous system, and it's okay to start slow. And I think most people are just like, let's blast off, and like I'm a firm believer that like slow is better. Slow is better.
And that's the number one reason people abandon their protocols and programs is like they take way too much too early, freaks them out, and then they're like, I'm done. I'm never doing that again. And now
Yeah.
it's like their whole perspective on it is very negative, which I get. It's too much. And I also think that the way a lot of these programs are structured, like let's say if you're doing ayahuasca ceremonies or you're doing ketamine infusions, like these things are big time investments. Sometimes they're very expensive as well. And it's like, I don't want to do just like a little small amount. Like this thing's costing me $700. Like I want to get my money's worth of the experience. So it kind of is set up for a way that I don't think is the most supportive for someone starting. Whereas with our program, it's like you're not you're not burning money by starting slow. It's like you're actually honoring your system. You're showing your system, hey, we don't have to do this fast. Like let's start slow and just see what happens. But it's okay to be afraid, but we're going to start so low that there's a chance you don't even feel anything after this experience. And what's
Yeah.
funny when people do like these small amounts for their very first one and don't feel anything or much, their whole apprehension has changed. Like they're no longer afraid of it. They're like, oh, I took some and nothing happened. So it actually flips the script a lot. So they go into the next one like, okay, like this isn't as scary as I thought. So
Yeah.
I think it's all about taking it slow, taking your time. Doesn't mean it has to take forever. It's just you don't have to on your first one blast yourself off somewhere.
Yeah. I love it. All right. And then we're going to end with this question. Why do I struggle even after a powerful session?
Because awareness in a ketamine session is not the same as you applying that awareness to all the different situations and circumstances and triggers and emotions and all everything that creates depth in this experience, none of it's been applied yet. It's like, yeah, when you're disassociated and you're up in the sky and in the clouds and in the sunshine, of course, you seem enlightened from that perspective. But then it's like, okay, let's bring that light back down to earth, which is, can you hold a glimmer of that light when you're triggered to death by something, right? Like, that's why, because it has to be applied to your life. That light has to be brought back down. And what I mean by light is that awareness, that spaciousness, that presence. But it's like an active presence. This isn't some passive thing. It's like I get triggered, I get activated. Boom, can I have that little bit of pause to where it's like, okay, I remember. I remember how to hold space in this, to let my body feel, let my mind think, and still choose how I want to respond. So if you're struggling, even just the question like baked into it is like this idea that your body shouldn't feel the way it does, or the mind it
Yeah.
shouldn't think the way it does. Like it's a struggle, like it's wrong. I should be feeling better. It's like, well, then that awareness of how everything's connected and how everything's working perfectly, even if you don't like it, hasn't landed yet. And that's okay. It's not to beat yourself up. It's just we have to look at the evidence. Like, oh, there's still parts of my life that I'm not accepting, that I won't let my body express fully, that I won't let my mind have its neurotic thoughts about. I'm still too enmeshed in those identities. So again, opportunities to pull ourselves back out and say, it's fine. It's all allowed. I can still choose how to act from here.
Yeah, I love that. And I know we talk about this all the time, but like insight isn't the same as embodiment, right? So, yes, you can have a big breakthrough and you can touch these profound sessions, but that doesn't automatically shift your baseline, right? Real healing is about shifting our baseline state. So, if you're not actively, again, like doing the things to integrate, to change your behaviors, right? To really do the things that are going to support you and who you're becoming, the profound sessions aren't going to do anything for you, right? Except be something cool to experience. And, we see this all the time. We have clients that love to chase these peak states, more medicine, higher doses, right? And their day to day life stays completely the same. So, we always talk about this fact that the medicine is going to open these doors, but you still have to be the person to walk through them. So that's the difference in having these profound sessions and actually having a changed reality after them, right? So I would really look at, what from that profound session feels really impactful for you. What was the one thing that you feel like you want to take and weave in your day to day life? And then every single day looking at your choices, your behaviors, your beliefs, your actions, your relationships, your environments, and asking yourself, do these things support that vision? Do these things support what I touched in that place? And if they don't, that's the work, right? It's really looking at, who am I choosing to be? Everything can be broken down into that. Who am I choosing to be? And if you're really looking at that aspect on top of doing this type of work, you will be successful. I will guarantee you will be successful, right? Even without medicine. If you look at yourself every day and at your choices and who you're being and ask, is this in alignment? Is this in support of who I'm becoming? If you're always checking in with yourself and moving from that place and allowing that to be your compass, you're going to heal, you're going to evolve, you're going to grow. The problem is, when we touch these profound sessions or insights or ahas, but still try to be the same person in our day to day life after experiencing them, right? There's going to be resistance, there's going to be friction, right? It's not an energetic match, right? So if you're wondering why I keep blasting off and I keep getting all these insights and all these ahas and nothing's happening, the deeper invitation is to really look at who you're choosing to be. And I'll just leave it at that.
And I love that perspective because if you think about working with ketamine or psychedelics or anything that's altering your state of consciousness, it's like you're reaching much further from the realm of practicality. Whereas, like, let's just say you were to envision in your own sober energy what's possible for the version I'm going to become, it's going to be more practical. Like, you can actually see steps towards moving towards that. But it's like I had this huge expansive thing where I was the sun and I knew everything. It's like Yeah, well, that's so far removed from your actual practical human experience. You almost have like an amnesia effect as you come back to the body. You can't remember any of that.
Yeah.
But where I think those are really helpful is in reminding people about possibility and like, whoa, reality is way more interesting and complex and way more organized than I understood. But why is that important? So we can have greater buy-in into our journey. It's like, can I take a little bit of that light that I connected with and anchor it into my life? Like little bits at a time. But that's going to come from practical steps. And like you said, who am I right now? How am I relating to my life? What choices am I making? Are they derived from my values or are they derived from escape from emotion and thought?
Yeah.
So if we start again, just to hit this point home one more time, if we stop letting our emotional triggers hijack our decisions, if we stop letting our ruminating thoughts hijack our decisions, we allow them to be there and we make choices from our values, which are the things that you care about, regardless of how you feel. Now you're actually acting from your essence and not from emotional or mental volatility, which is going to happen. I will say the waves don't seem to be as big when you're not resisting it. So it's like you might feel anger, but anger doesn't turn into explosive rage because anger is allowed a seat at the table. Whereas if it's like I shouldn't feel anger and it keeps getting repressed, it's like pressure builds up and then it becomes explosive. So can we let it express and still make decisions from our values? And I know we hit a lot on that, and we talk about that in other sessions. So go check that out if you want more information on like where do I actually make choice from if it's not from feeling happy, which I think a lot of us is. Oh, I should just do what makes me happy. It's like
Yeah.
if that's what you want, you wouldn't have kids, like you wouldn't start a business because you're not going to be happy all the time, right?
No.
There's something deeper than just feeling happy, right? It's like this is a part of me. This is a part of my bigger mission, right? There's gonna be ups and downs. I'm gonna have frustrating days like we had today. It's like that's how it goes. But I'll end it on that. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Kaylin?
Last thing I want to add is that, we have been hosting these subconscious reprogramming sessions every Thursday night inside of our private community, and they have personally become my most favorite sessions of the week. And our clients cannot stop ranting and raving about them. So much to the point that we've decided to open the doors and allow other people to just be in the field, to be in the room. And if you're someone who feels like, you've been doing all the things, you're checking all the boxes, you've talked about your problems, you're doing medicine work or maybe other healing work and just can't seem to get that breakthrough you're looking for, I'm telling you, this is the answer. So I would love for you to come, be immersed in our community, be immersed in our field. There's no pressure to share, to even turn your camera on. You really just get to come and receive and give the body this felt experience of something other and start opening up possibilities and these new felt experiences that maybe you don't have access to in your conscious window. So if you're interested in that, comment below and we will send you the link to this week's session, and we would love an opportunity to support you.
I definitely recommend coming, especially if you want your body to start believing in actual possibility, not just something connected to taking something, right? So in your own energy, is it possible to feel the light side of things? I know most of us can check off the boxes of feeling the dark side of things. We're not all open up to that light side yet. So this is a really good way to establish a new baseline in your nervous system, get it not bracing against life so much. So definitely let us know if you want to be a part of that. But if not, that was a great session, Kaylin. Thank you for your time. And we'll talk to you guys later.